Welcome to Corpse Club, the official podcast of DailyDead.com. I'm one of your co-hosts, Jonathan James, and I'm joined today by Bryan Christopher and Derek Anderson. We are back. It is our first episode of 2023. We had a well-deserved and much-needed break during the holidays. I know many of you probably had the same and needed it, and so I feel pretty good. I feel recharged. We haven't been on an episode together in a while. I missed you guys.
Yeah, missed you too. We were talking beforehand, I don't think even Derek and I haven't been on an episode since like the Halloween hangover. I can't even remember the last time all three of us did an episode together.
Yeah, it's been a little bit.
Yeah, been a while, but it felt good to recharge. And also a special shout out to James Doherty for recording a couple of really interesting deep dive episodes of Corpse Club for Silent Night and Wishmaster. So that was really fun to listen to over the holidays.
Yeah, that was a fun treat. Hopefully it was fun for our listeners. I know it was, but it was as fun of a treat for myself because James is like, hey, I wanted to, put something together for the podcast. And of course, we'll have James on with us in a future episode for sure. But he was like, I just wanted to put together some interviews for Wishmaster. And he's like, here's who I want to get. And I'm like, okay. And he put it together and he did such a great job with it and just super, super impressed with that. So he's going to do some other retrospectives like that as well. So if you enjoyed both of those, we got more coming.
Awesome. Yeah, it looks it's fun this time of year to kind of look ahead on the calendar and see what's in store, whether or not it's been announced to everyone yet. But it's going to be another fun year, and there's a lot of really cool stuff coming out too.
Yeah, exactly. I think I'm doing the math right. I know I'm doing the math right, unless there's some kind of time travel, timey-wimey, Doctor Who style stuff going on. We are going to hit episode 300 at some point this year. And I will admit fully to my co-hosts and the audience, we don't know what we're doing yet for episode 300, but we will come up with something to mark the momentous occasion.
I know we've been talking for a long time about bringing back Choose Between Two.
I know, and
that might be the time to do it.
And we were going to do it. We actually were going to do it in December. Part of it is that we need Christy. And then, of course, the what do you call it? My life has been very difficult in the second half of 2022. I think as we're doing this episode as part of a way to reflect on 2022 and some of our favorites, and maybe not so favorites. Doesn't matter. We can talk about whatever we want. But we are going to say goodbye 2022 and hello and fingers crossed 2023 is better. At least for me. I know some people had some great years or had a great year, but for me, I would call it a challenging year, and I had a lot of good things happen. I think it was great to meet the two of you guys, and then I had to see you again, Derek. I've seen you in person before, but and then I had and then I had some not great things happen. We had some health issues. I had my uncle who passed away at the tail end of October from stomach cancer. He just learned about it, I think a few weeks he knew about it before he passed away. So just not great stuff all around. And then we have our little pup, Logan, and he has had a bunch of health issues over the last few months, including that he went blind. So we've getting used to that and having a special needs dog. So a lot of my attention and focus rightfully has been there. I would say, and then we got buried under the 6 or 7 feet monster snowstorm.
Well, twice, happened. Yeah, right? Didn't you get 2 of those?
We got 3 storms. 2 of them were like you're snowed in. I think we had one where it was only 3 feet. But yeah, we had one in November that was it was about 6 feet because it almost covered the entire window. It did cover the entire window when the snow drifted. And then we had that major storm that hit in December. And it was interesting to say the least for us. We felt very lucky and fortunate because just about 20 minutes away was where a couple dozen people unfortunately passed away because it was so cold out there. People got stuck in their cars. People weren't able to get to the hospital who needed it. There's just a lot of terrible things. You think snowstorm and you're like, oh, well, you can just stay inside. And that's, and in most cases you can, but when it gets so cold, you might get trapped if you're traveling from work, or the power may be out. A lot of people had power who was out for multiple days. And so some people passed away because they just, they were frozen in their homes. So really terrible stuff. But the city of Buffalo and the town of Western New York, because it's kind of, they call it Erie County. But that whole area just kind of came together and tried to help each other out. In our case, myself and my wife stayed at my parents' place with some of our other family members, and we just spent 4 or 5 days snowed in together. And like I said, we were very lucky. We got to celebrate Christmas together. We did keep power. And I think the big thing was we just took turns and shifts, kind of shoveling ourselves out a little bit at a time. But I'd say that myself, I probably put in 20 hours over the Christmas, like that Christmas week, just keeping the snow back.
Oof. Man.
Yeah,
that was like a horror movie.
Yeah, I remember seeing some of the news footage about, like, especially the houses that were right up against the Great Lake. It was just like they were encased in ice. It looked like something out of a horror movie. It was wild. Like, it was beautiful, but it was just surreal to see that.
Yeah, interestingly, the one that got the most attention is a restaurant called Hoax. And I went to school with one of the Hoax. It's a family-owned business, and so I went to school with Eileen Hoke over there, and her brother as well. And so it's been a family-owned restaurant for a long, long time, and I wouldn't say they're used to it, because how do you get used to it? But they're known for, when you get these big snows, they're the place that gets hit, because you have the waves that just end up blasting anything in that area. And then what they call, some people may know, they have what they call lake effect snow, which is you get your regular snow and then it snowed on the lake. And so you get like that 3 feet, 6 feet of snow. And then the next day the wind picks that snow up and it dumps it all over the place. And so, you mix all that stuff together and then you get these houses freezing over. They did say this was kind of like a once in a generation storm. I do hope we don't get another one, but yeah, we had that. So it definitely, I think it took us like 5 or 6 days to get out for us.
Wow. Yeah. It reminds me of like one of those old Stephen King short stories where it's like a nor'easter and it just, snows everyone in, and then creepy stuff starts happening. But thankfully you guys are able to stay safe and warm, because it doesn't take long for that to get really serious really quick. So
yeah. So anyway, so I mean, we're gonna talk about bright spots and highlights of 22, but when you hear me talking through this episode, and I'm like, I can't wait. I'm glad we're in the new year. That's why. Like I said, I think we had ups and downs, at least on my side, but just a lot of stuff that I'm like, okay, I'm ready to start a new year. I'm ready for some warmth. So yeah, and I'm ready to kind of get back into everything. So we're going to talk more about 2022, some of our favorites. I would say, for those that have not heard us talk about these in the past and don't know what we do at Daily Dead, we run our favorites every year. We've been doing it for 11 years, 12 years. And we always call them favorites. We don't call them best. And the reason is because we can't catch up with everything. I wrote it in my article this year, but I think this year for me was this was the tipping point. More has come out than I can possibly catch up on. And it's not even just more. It's not quantity. It's quality. People are saying, oh, you're missing out on this. And it's like, this is a great, movie. This is a great show. And I believe them. I just can't catch up on all that. I mean, I think I know I saw over 200 movies. I saw multiple shows on streaming. I've read, 5,000 plus pages of comic books. I've played multiple video games. I feel like I've scratched the surface. And
slacker.
I know, right? And what I will say is you kind of have to, my recommendation for everyone is to not put the pressure on yourself, kind of like I think maybe we used to, where you like, oh no, I didn't catch up on everything, because you can't. So just give in to the madness and just, you're going to pick your battles. And I think that's kind of where the favorites and us talking about it really help, because to a degree, and I'm what do you call it? I'm gonna toot my own horn. I'll you guys can toot your horn. but essentially, like, we're tastemakers to a degree, and I'm not saying us, but I'm saying everybody, right? It's like there are certain people you are going to listen to or follow that share similar taste to you, or maybe they don't, but they may suggest something that you haven't heard of, or that maybe you missed because something else great came out. And so, what I would encourage our listeners and our readers to do is, to continue to, obviously we're going to have some picks for you, but then go to dailydead.com. You're going to have a lot of our team members who are going to have suggestions, and they're going to range from movies to TV to podcasts to experiences, and they may turn you on to something you may have missed. So yes, that's what we're going to be talking through. And so, Bryan, I'm going to turn it over to you to kind of kick things off. I know we've already been talking about 2022, but tell us some of your bright spots. Tell us some of the highlights that you've had.
I'm actually going to start with the most recent thing that I saw on Christmas Day, no less. And it is, I would say, horror adjacent, because it's not strictly a horror movie, but it is made by Norwegian director Tommy Wirkola, who you might know from the Dead Snow movies. And he has put together what I consider a Christmas masterpiece in Violent Night. I loved this movie. This was like everything that I expected and wanted from the trailer. This movie delivered on. It is monumentally stupid, and I mean that in the best possible way. It is just like a dopey, over the top comedy action thriller, starring David Harbour. Everybody knows, Hopper from Stranger Things, Hellboy. He's kind of that go-to for the gruff kind of, but also kind of like teddy bear character. And here he steers that into let's say a burly, violent version of Bad Santa, the Billy Bob Thornton movie, because he is disillusioned, he is drunk, but he is actually Santa Claus, unlike Billy Bob Thornton's character. And so he's like, you pick up with this character as he's just about to kind of like maybe give it up, because he's tired of dealing with like the entitled bratty kids who don't really believe in anything. They just want stuff. And so he's going through what he thinks is going to be his last night of doing this. And he stumbles on, he's delivering presents to this very wealthy family who wind up in the crosshairs of a like deadly heist team led by John Leguizamo, who is absolutely perfect in this movie. He plays it like really straight and gruff and grumpy in a way that is just like, it's a good contrast to like just the goofy shenanigans that are going on in this movie.
He is really so amazing,
isn't he? Like John Leguizamo, just in anything. Like he's great in this. I love him in everything. He's just like, for as well known as he is, I still think he's a really underrated actor.
1,000,000%. He's great in everything he's in. I think it was such a smart choice for them to make him a Scrooge. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's obvious. It's obvious when you watch it, and what this movie does, I think, is it makes some choice. It makes the entire movie and the character and story choices they make, they seem obvious, but they mix a whole bunch of different movies and elements together in a way that feels cohesive and unique. So like, and I can imagine in other hands that he would just have been, someone who was breaking in. He wouldn't have been this Grinch or this Scrooge, and it just it plays so perfectly.
Yeah, because what it turns into is basically it's Die Hard with Santa. And I don't want to give like the plot twists aren't a huge part of this, but I do think there's some interesting plot twists in terms of like where Santa Claus comes from and things that I don't want to necessarily give away. But it's Santa Claus as John McClane. Like it's him versus just this team of terrorists / robbers, basically. And so, anybody who has seen the Dead Snow movies know it is over the top violent. And this, I don't think quite reaches those like surreal like farcical peaks of violence that you get in the Dead Snow movies, but it's a pretty bloody movie. And Jonathan, you had mentioned they bring in elements of a lot of different movies. If anybody has ever watched Home Alone and wished that they like really showed what would happen to the bad guys in Home Alone should they hit those booby traps, you are going to want to see a certain sequence in this movie. You will be very, very satisfied.
Yeah, this is one of those movies where I didn't put it on my favorites list. I put it on my honorable mention, and it really kind of should have been on my favorites list. It was one of those things where, there were a lot of picks. But this, I saw a lot of movies, but this is definitely one that could have gone either way. I've showed this movie to a number of people already. I saw it at New York Comic Con. I've been raving about it since. It is really good. And what also elevates it is that, it's the same producers that they worked on the John Wick franchise, worked on Nobody, they worked on Bullet Train, like even some of the people participating in the heist, they're stunt actors. So it was easier to work with Dave Harbour. So they know how to do action, and they do it really, 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 really well. Mm-hmm. What this does make me sad about is that I actually am someone that really liked Dave Harbour as Hellboy. I literally just put the movie, after seeing Violent Night, I put the movie back on. There's a lot of great things in the Hellboy reboot. There was a lot of meddling, according to stories that was going on, where there's fighting between, what the producers wanted, what the director wanted. They didn't have a cohesive vision, and it shows on screen. And it feels in a lot of ways like a pilot for a TV show. But imagine if like this creative team put him in Hellboy. I mean, I think when you see this, you're like, they underused Dave Harbour in that movie. Like the problem wasn't Dave Harbour, and like when you really have like all the right people behind him, like he's a really good physical actor. He's really funny, and I'd love to see more of that. Whether it's I'll take more Violent Night, but I also would love to see him in Hellboy again.
Yeah, I think I loved him as Hellboy. I don't think it quite the product as a whole came together as like people would have liked. I think the biggest thing he suffered from that is that he had to follow Ron Perlman, and so there was it's essentially the same thing as like anybody taking on the Pinhead mantle is always going to pale in comparison for me to Doug Bradley. Coming out at 2023, I'm already bringing in Hellraiser into a discussion that doesn't warrant it, but here we are. Yeah. I like the idea of, I think why I like Violent Night is because it taps into some of those same sensibilities that David Harbour was bringing to Hellboy and kind of letting him make his own character with it. So yeah, I'd love to see more of these, or just like, I hope this is the impetus to show like he can carry movies like this. And that I think, something like Hellboy, like the quote unquote failure that was, is more of an exception than a rule for David Harbour.
Yeah. And I would say that based on the success of this movie and what he was able to do, I wouldn't be surprised if we get more of him in Thunderbolts, because he is in Thunderbolts. Mm-hmm. And so I think hopefully, the creative team saw that and they're like, we need to use Dave Harbour more. Yeah. And that happened with with Avengers, because, and I always say allegedly, it's just because I don't have the source in front of me, but allegedly when Black Panther was doing so well, they decided to put that character more in Infinity War and in Avengers, but that Black Panther wasn't necessarily as big of a component of that film, but they decided to kind of change it midway. And I think we'll probably see something similar with Dave Harbour's character for Thunderbolts, because he can carry a movie by himself.
And it wouldn't be surprising to see more Violent Night movies, because it's made $74 million off of a $20 million budget. So it's definitely making some money. So
yeah, I would definitely take a sequel.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's Mrs. Claus, there's the North Pole. There's a lot more to get into with it. And I hope they do, because yeah, I had a blast watching it. And I honestly think it's one of the goriest movies like I've ever seen, which I was expecting them with the R rating to like lean into that, but they went above and beyond with the gore effects than I even expected, especially with the whole like tool shed massacre to the Bryan Adams song. It's just like wow. I and that, that's a theatrical cut, so when it comes out like on Blu-ray, I am really going to be interested like what else is on the cutting room floor, because I feel like they were able to do whatever they wanted when it came to that stuff. And then also it was really fun to see Beverly D'Angelo, who of course is in Christmas Vacation, one of the, when you consider the greatest Christmas movies of all time. For me, it's right up there with A Christmas Story. But it was so fun to see her character and her play such like a venomous character, like this mom that just doesn't give a crap, like, and is not afraid to speak her mind to the like nth degree. So it was really fun to see her not only get a role, but a role that wasn't just like a cameo, like, oh, just go stand in the corner. It was like, no, you're like at the forefront of the story and everyone in the room is afraid of you. So it was really fun to see that play out.
Yeah, and it's weird how much all the humor really works. Like, I wouldn't like again, you can imagine like the annoying sister and her actor boyfriend and her influencer son. Like, they they all played it over the top. Like, a lot of these characters are bigger than life. Like, when you watch this movie, I say this with others, like, sometimes you have a problem when you're like, this movie sort of takes place in the real world, but it doesn't. But I think that even though they have some characters that are grounded in reality, having these other ones that play, more stereotypes, like it still works. They all come together. It's a magical movie.
Yes.
Yeah,
magic of movies.
So Bryan, we're talking about your 2022 and we've only gone back a week. So
I'll cover a little bit more time with my second pick, because it's not a movie, it's a directing duo. And I want to give some kudos to Vanessa and Joseph Winter, who have put together two of my favorite kind of horror pieces. One is a feature film. The other is a vignette in a anthology that came out this year. We'll start with their feature, Deadstream. We've, I think, talked about this multiple times. I talked about how much I loved it, pitching you two on it, I think, before you saw it when we were at Overlook. Because I think, if I remember correctly, we did our recording right before you two were getting ready to go see it. And then, obviously, you two have had rave reviews for it since you've seen it. It's just such a great movie. It's so funny. It's so scary. For those, who haven't, for whatever reason, either heard us or anybody else talk about it, it is about this disgraced social media influencer or YouTube guy who is trying to get back into the public eye by going to like an infamous haunted house and doing a live stream from there. And they make such great use of the medium because he sets up a bunch of cameras that like you can see what's going on in all the cameras, even sometimes when he can't. They make really great use of like the live feed comment section, and they just really lean into the fact that he is just this really obnoxious asshole, and so they put him in the middle of all of this like splat stick, off the wall, crazy, like, and also scary. Like, it's funny, but there are some genuinely scary moments in this movie as the house starts to kind of like close in on him and the entities in it start to attack. But I love Deadstream. Can't say enough good things about it. And then the other piece that they did this year was a vignette for VHS 99, which I really liked it as a whole. VHS 99, I didn't like it quite as much as VHS 94 from last year. But they capped off, I think it was 5 different shorts or vignettes, and they did one called To Hell and Back, where these videographers who are watching this Coven of Witches like perform a ritual, they accidentally get swapped for kind of the vessel that is supposed to go to hell, and they get warped to hell, and they have to find their way back. And it's, again, just like Deadstream, it's this really great mix of funny and scary, and also like you can tell, the VHS 99 movies, they're not going into these with a lot of budget, but what they're able to do with like just good camera work, finding a good setting. I think the setting that they use to kind of take place, be the setting for hell, a circle of hell, worked really, really well and worked in their favor. And they're just really creative, and they're just really good at mixing like these kind of wacky off the wall characters with kind of some really horrific situations and not shying away from either side of that spectrum. So I really love the work they've done this year, and I'm really excited to see what they give us in the future.
I think this year or last year is a great year for some filmmakers that, you know, just really knocked it out of the park, and you know they're going to continue to do great things. Vanessa and Joseph Winter are some of those, and Deadstream's incredible. And I guess I go back to talking about this, like they made it look easy. Like the movie is so good, it flows perfectly. Everything feels organic. It's funny through and through. Like it doesn't show any of its seams. It's really it's a great example of just forging your own path. And you know, you don't have to have a completely original concept. You can just, you know, take something like Evil Dead and say, well, what if we did Evil Dead, but we did it, you know, kind of found footage style? But what about instead of traditional found footage, we followed an influencer and did a live stream? And it took this concept, which if it had just been found footage Evil Dead, might not have been as interesting. But here it's lively. And by having this, you know, this YouTuber who you hate, and watching him go through all of this, they just are able to mix comedy and horror and do it in a way that feels so fresh. It's just, it was such a treat to watch and to see, and I'm so happy for these filmmakers as well. And I will give a little plug. I had a chance to catch up with them for about 20 minutes. So we do have a video interview coming up soon where we talk more about what went into Deadstream and VHS.
Awesome. Yeah, wait for that.
Deadstream was definitely one of my favorite movies, if not like my favorite overall at Overlook Film Festival. And I remember you talking about it, Brian. And it reminds me kind of a more comedic like version of Grave Encounters, which is one of my favorite horror movies. And I think the whole premise just works so well with the comedy, with the, you know, the YouTuber aspect, and just finding really creative ways to scare you and using where the camera work is like another character. And it's like you said, just it's really funny, but at the same time, like there's this uneasiness throughout the movie that kind of builds and builds as the creatures become like more just grotesque, and like you just never know what they're going to throw at you. And the practical effects work in that movie is so great. So yeah, I definitely concur that this is among my favorites as well. And I'm really excited to see what they do next, because I think what they've done so far on low budgets, I just can't imagine what they would be able to do with a little more money in their pocket too on their next feature or short film.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what's up next for them. I would assume, and I don't know, but I would assume that they have multiple things in the works, or they have multiple offers, because this is definitely one of the bigger debuts this year.
Yeah, you know, it's funny too, because you hear like someone gets, I think it was you know, you read in interviews where like, you know, they have like a really good kind of lower budget first film, and then like, you know, might get 20 offers, might get franchise offers to, you know, hop into a franchise. So I'll be really curious to see. It'd be kind of fun to see them play around with an existing IP or just do something bonkers that's of their own imagination. So definitely curious to hop back in there.
Well, Jonathan, you had mentioned like the kind of the Evil Dead-esqueness of it. I think they would be an interesting choice because, like, you know, I'm sure we're going to talk about Evil Dead Rise at some point when we talk about looking forward to 2023. But, you know, a lot of people, or the last few iterations of Evil Dead have kind of been leaning more into the horror. And like, if we wanted something that was maybe a little bit more in the vein of Army of Darkness, I think they would be really good to kind of take on that mantle and maybe do something within like that corner of the Evil Dead universe.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think they would easily be able to do that. You know, anything in the vein of Shaun of the Dead. I don't think they just need to do horror and comedy, but it would be a shame if they didn't do more horror and comedy. Absolutely, yeah. Because they're just so good at it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so we're gonna hop around a little bit because I want to get some of Derek's favorites as well, and see a little bit about how your 2022 was, Derek. You can pick straight movies. It can be, remember, it can be events. It can be collectibles. It can be, I say that, but nobody ever says collectibles. I have done it occasionally, but I always say that so when we have new team members, they know, like, really it can be anything. And we have got some good picks. But anyway, no pressure, Derek, now that I started with all of this. So how was your 2022?
It was good. All things considered, it was good. I know there's obviously a lot going on in the world, and mileage may vary, but it was, I'm very lucky to say that I had a good 2022 overall. And yeah, you saying collectibles makes me nostalgic for, like, back in the day going to Comic-Con in San Diego and, like, coming back with, like, a treasure trove of, like, collectibles. So now I'm really nostalgic for, like, all the NECA figures and, like, all those Funko goodies that we used to get. So
yeah, hopefully this summer. That'd be nice.
Yeah, you never know. So yeah, nothing nothing at the top of the mind in that department for me. But I did, in addition to having an amazing time with both of you at the Overlook Film Festival, which was my first time attending that film festival in New Orleans, which, I mean, that was great. Doing the scavenger hunt was awesome, and just kind of getting to walk around the city and explore and go on that adventure with both of you and Christy was definitely a lot of fun. So first and foremost, that's on my list. And we survived too. So
we did indeed.
But
that was such a great time. Like, and that was one of those things we literally recorded from there. So we did a deep dive. I don't want to rehash too much, but it was honestly, for as much as I love going to a film festival, I think it was all the stuff around the films that Overlook does that I really appreciated. And, even though because of COVID, they had really good, parameters this year, masking, and they didn't overdo it in terms of, I'm told their immersive stuff, has been more immersive in the past and probably will be in the future. But even what we got to do was so much fun and just a way to, like, the shared experience of it. It's fun to go see a movie together, but, like, we were kind of running around New Orleans and, like, just getting to do these, kind of creepy, but also, like, fun. We're out in the street and just doing random stuff. So it was just, like, being able to do that and just, like, kind of have that memory with everybody it was so awesome. It was so great. And it's one of those things that is just, like, for all the movies I'm going to see this year, like, that's going to be the thing that I'm going to remember the most.
Yeah, and it was cool because we had the flexibility to, like, movies wasn't necessarily the main thing we were doing. Like, we were just going on this adventure that we didn't know where it was going to take us next. And then we would, like, watch movies when we had spare time while at the festival. So, and eating amazing food and all that good stuff. So that was like, it made it truly a unique experience and you feel like you're really enjoying the city too, because it's nice to, like, be able to step outside of the theater and, like, see the surroundings. And of course, a city like New Orleans, where there's so much history and there's a lot of haunted history as well, with the paranormal and things like that. It was really cool to, like, get out there a little bit. So that was awesome. And I remember we had our Halloween costume party, and where we had Halloween in June, and I was, like, in my zombie prom tuxedo. That is just a white tuxedo just spattered with blood, with the corsage and everything, and kind of, like, tried to, like, put some, like, white makeup on my face and some scars and things like that. And I'd worn this at, like, the Dance of the Dead anniversary screening several years ago, and it was fun to kind of pull that out of the closet again for this. And the thing is, like, my white makeup, I think, kind of, like, sweated off during the party, so I'm walking, like, 10 blocks or so, whatever it was, back to the hotel. And I think people just thought I was just, like, this bloody guy I actually had, like a Lyft driver, like, pull over and ask me if I was okay. Like, people were giving me the side eye. It was just doing that alone was fun. That made it totally worth it.
Although I feel like that's probably still only, like, top, like, maybe 75% of, like, what people see regularly on Bourbon Street.
Yeah, I think it probably helped because like even the hotel desk worker, she didn't really bat an eye. She's like, I've seen much worse.
No, I remember
and, like went back to reading her magazine.
Remember I told you guys, and I think I said it on here, but yeah, I once got, as part of an immersive experience, I got duct taped and like tossed out with like half my clothes into the middle of the street in downtown New Orleans, and nobody came to help me. They're just like, oh, here's this freak. He's all like duct taped, and I had to use my teeth to take the duct tape off of my hands, and nobody helped. Nobody helped. I heard that because of that experience, it happened with some women as well, and some people were nice enough to help them, but for me it was like no. So yeah, it surprises me, but it doesn't. But yeah, Overlook was great. It was so nice to get back to it. I am hoping to do Overlook in 23, so as we kind of flip over occasionally to things that we're looking forward to, that is one of them. Yeah,
I was going to say the same thing. I am leaning towards like I'd love to be able to make this an annual thing. Obviously, coming from the West Coast, it's not always the easiest thing, but I'm leaning towards I think I'm going to try and get out there again this year is the goal.
Yeah, and likewise for me too. I know it's taking place a little bit earlier this year. I think we're looking at
it's a better time of year for New Orleans.
Yeah, so that was the one thing when, like, getting there, coming from the Pacific Northwest and then going to New Orleans in June. I started sweating when I got there. I did not stop till I got home.
Yeah. And this year they will have an in-person immersive experience, because we kind of got that hybrid state. So I am excited for the two of you, if we go, to experience like their live actors and like running through the city trying to figure out what's what. It's always something special.
Can't wait to get duct tape.
I was just gonna say,
that one won't happen. That was a different one. That is a different experience. You had to opt in for that, so that's a little different. But
gotcha.
Yeah, that's I'm super excited for what the future holds with that. And on that note too, I was very lucky. So that happened in June. The Overlook Film Festival. And then a couple months later in August, I got to go down to Miami Beach for the second half of the Popcorn Frights 2022 Film Festival. And I always have an amazing time with Popcorn Frights. I got to be on the jury back in 2019 for Popcorn Frights, and I got invited to be back on the jury this year. Along with Nathan Rose from Flick Direct and filmmaker Aaron Dalton. So the three of us got to watch just a ton of short films and a whole bunch of feature films. It was, I kind of had screeners going all summer long just to keep up with it all, and definitely watched a lot while I was there. But it was so fun and so inspiring to watch just so many different filmmakers from around the world and seeing all of these amazing films, both with the short films and the feature length movies that they're coming up with. And they really do just such an amazing job. Mark and Igor, who program this festival, they do, in addition to like the newer movies, they'll do retrospective screenings. I got to watch the cult 80s movie Miami Connection for the first time, which was just awesome.
Miami Connection, so good.
To watch that movie in Miami, that was, even though it was like filmed in Orlando, it was just so much fun, and just an amazing time down there watching, so many great movies, and just meeting and talking with a lot of these up and coming short filmmakers too, who just have these amazing backstories of the resources that they're working with and where they came from and how they're, kind of pulling together all these resources to make the movie that they want to make, and then hopefully go on to make a feature length version of that short film. So that was just really, really awesome to do that. Even though I kind of choked on the final round of movie trivia, and where I messed up the Fritters line from Motel Hell. So my team ended up taking second place, and I feel like I was like just one word away from helping us take the trophy on that one. But it was a lot of fun. It
sounds like it's going to haunt you, because I think you've mentioned that a few times already.
1000%.
Well, then to kind of like, let's ease that a little bit, and let's go back to Overlook, where if I remember correctly, they didn't keep track of like the total score winner at the end, but if they had, Team Daily Dead, I think, would have come out on top because we were kicking ass.
Well, we did win. We did win one round outright, and there was a little scoring snafu, and it is okay. But when he mentioned that, I remembered ours where we got a perfect score, and it accidentally didn't get counted. But that's okay because it was all in good fun.
We know. We know.
But we know.
Yeah.
that also sounds like something that will not haunt us forever, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It won't. It'll never haunt us. Yeah. So yeah, there's been a lot of good events. 2022 has been weird. And I guess I'll say too, for our listeners, I think it's important. I know it's important, is because, and I know I'm speaking for the two of you to a degree with this, but if you feel differently or whatever, let me know. But it's interesting that we're still actively in a pandemic. There are still millions of people getting infected. I know no fewer than 4 people from back east that currently have it. Yeah. And I'm laughing because it's the only thing to keep me from crying and going insane, because it's not funny. We're still in a pandemic, and there are still hundreds of people in the US that are dying from COVID every day. I am still having to be extra careful because I'm a caregiver for family members that have cancer. So I'm still masking regularly. I'm still watching that I don't go to places, or if I do, I quarantine. I'm still not going to theaters. So I want to say that because I think that so many people want to go back to normal, and I want to acknowledge and say that it's okay for any of our listeners if you're not going out to places. We're talking about these events, and some of these is our favorites because in some cases, like it was for me, like Overlook was one of the only times I went out. It was one of the only times I got to see people, and they had a mask policy in place. They had a vaccine policy in place. I masked on the plane. I masked when I was outside, and and when I came back, I quarantined for my family so that I wasn't impacting other people I know. And I know there are a number of people out there and people that are listening, they're doing the same. And if that's the case, that's totally cool. So I also, because like I said, I know a lot of people want to get back to normal, and some people can. And if there's, if your health is great, if it's part of your job and you have to get back out there because in a lot of cases they're making it seem like it's not there anymore, but you're not going crazy. It's okay to be like, hey, like COVID's still here. I'm not going out. And there are a lot of people, like I said, myself included, who still are taking a hybrid approach. And I know there are some people who aren't going out completely. So I did want to call that out because I think that's very important.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like I said, it's definitely still there. It hasn't gone anywhere. And even though we're able to get like the booster shots and everything, everyone has different levels of familial connections that they have to be aware of, and people they come in contact with, and different risk factors. So it's not like just one, it's not like one right or wrong answer. It's like there's so many different levels of this that people have to be aware of and consider when they either, go out, especially like, a huge event too, where there's the crowds and everything like that. So I know when we went to Overlook, it was, we were around a lot of people, but we were also in a very kind of controlled environment too. So that helped, knowing that a little more about what we were getting into with, what was required and how, we handled it with masking and everything. So it was nice that they were able, because it's nice, especially in what, some might consider a transition period. It's like, well, you still have to be considerate for those that just can't jump back into the pool. So
yeah. It's, it was, I felt more comfortable there. I said, of course, because like I said, they had a vaccine policy. And even then, some people, we knew they got it, right? Because it doesn't stop you from getting on a plane or from interacting with other people. There's no way you can be 100% safe unless you don't leave the house. And for some people, that is the option that they have to take. So it's, it's definitely, this isn't worst case scenario, but this is obviously not where anybody wanted to be in 2023, saying, hey, we're still dealing with this shit. But yeah, I wanted to call that out, because now I brought us way down.
Also, I feel like I don't have anything to add other than I agree with what Jonathan and Derek have been saying, but I feel like if I just stay silent, then people are going to think I'm like doing my own research in the background. Like, yeah, I think you kind of both articulated it both like really well. And yeah, we're still in a pandemic. What, 3 years later at this point? It's
we're on to year
going.
4. Yeah. I mean, we're starting like year 3 into 4.
Yeah.
So I consider this like 2020 part 4 because I really don't feel like time it's been so like warped and like a melted candy bar in the car since like March of 2020 that it either feels like it's going way too fast or way too slow and nowhere, like no happy medium. So I don't know if it's like like you could tell me it's 2030 like next week and I'd be like, I suppose that tracks.
Yeah. Honestly, I was never a big New Year's guy anyway, but like this is the year that it kind of finally became like, I'm not necessarily like, I'm not doing resolutions. I'm not wishing everybody like a great start to 2023 because like in a lot of ways, this is an arbitrary designation. Like nothing really changes from December 31st to January 1st. And I really think like 3 years of the pandemic has made me be like, I think we just got to be ready for whatever 2023 has to throw at us because I'm just not going to expect like, 2020 didn't ease up, 2021 didn't ease up, 2022 didn't ease up. Like, let's get ready to rumble with 2023. Put up your dukes. There's going to be some good stuff and there's going to be some challenges. So I don't know why I've gone down this fatalistic path with 2023, but here we are.
And it's funny because I'm the opposite. I've gone like the mystical path, and I'm like, I'm going to like we like for New Year's was hanging out with my parents, and it was really like a goodbye, like so long 2022, and embracing the new year. That switch over was like screw you last year, and and manifesting that this year is going to be better. That there's what do you call it? It's got, and on my side, it's got to be better. There's got to be there's an uptick coming. I feel it. And there is a mind over matter aspect of it. At least I believe it. So that's what I'll choose to believe. So we had some of Derek's favorites, which were events, and Derek, you can feel free to jump in with other ones. But I'm going to switch over to me for the sake of time, and we are going to
all collectibles.
All collectibles. I talked about this all the time. I don't even have that many. I haven't gotten. I used to get a lot of, and now I'm going to talk about it. I used to get a lot of like little figures, and then I was like, instead of getting a lot of little figures, I'll just save up and just get like 1 or 2 big figures. And so I would get some of the sideshow pieces and stuff like that. So I have some cool sideshows. But this year this last year, I did not get much. I think I got a Shin Godzilla vinyl figure that's about a foot tall, and it's like a stylized version, and from Japan, and that was cool. Nice. So I'll have to show you pictures of it, but it's awesome. And it's like,
does it come with the little creatures on top of it too?
It doesn't, but it has like the tail has like definitely has like the little mouth on it and stuff. So nice. Yeah, so I got that because I love Shin Godzilla, and so I got that, and I got a pre-order for like a larger Shin Godzilla figure, which is still like 2 feet tall, and I'm supposed to be getting that from Japan. So I'm excited about that. Those are my collectibles, and I bought. I guess this year what I did was this past year I bought some comic book art, so I was happy to get some of that. So I got some different Spider-Man art. I was at New York Comic Con. I met Ryan Otley, who I love his work. And I had one, they have like some of the, like because they all have like art reps or like dealers, but sometimes they'll do like charity auctions or things like that. So I was able to get like a Hulk piece from him that was kind of small, but I got a Spider-Man piece in New York Comic Con. And just trying to get like little things here or there that I could get either if it was like for charity or if it was at a discount. But yeah, I've just been getting some comic book art. So that was cool to collect that. I definitely, it's a hobby I can't continue, but but I got some pieces that I was happy with. But let's see. And in 2022, here's the weird thing about the one movie, the one movie that just does not, will not get out of my head. And I don't know if it's like social or I don't know what it is. It's Terrifier. I don't know why it's Terrifier 2. I honestly don't know why it's Terrifier 2. It shouldn't be Terrifier 2, but it is. It's just it's amazing what that movie was able to do. And I don't know if you guys have seen it, but it's like,
I have not.
Not yet.
It's ultra violent, ultra gory. It clocks in at like 2.5 hours. So, some would argue that it overstays its welcome. And I agree with this. But the thing is like it is made like a lost, and I wrote this down, but it's like a lost video nasty. Like, people don't make movies like this, not these days. And I guess that's why this movie continues to stick in my head. There are some this movie legitimately makes people feel uncomfortable. Like, usually you'll see, especially like at a US productions, like you have to worry about your R rating, so you trim things down. And so like it'll like cut away. It not only does this not cut away, but like it's like Art the Clown is like it's a mean-spirited killer.
Like daring you to look at the stuff that's happening.
Yeah. And and a lot of it's practical. There's some, they use, as many do, like you see on The Walking Dead and stuff, they'll use CG to kind of enhance the practical, but it's significantly practical. And I just think that it's an incredible story of what this movie was able to do. $250,000 budget and making 10 million, 12 million. I think it made more than that.
This made a mainstream splash.
Yeah, right? It made like $12 million.
This took a video nasty and put it in like mainstream popular culture spotlight.
Yeah, and so you have Bloody Disgusting distributing it, which is that this is and Cinedigm, and this is not something that they're able to release movies, but not movies that like have this much buzz. They certainly don't have like the reach of a major studio. So for them to be able to do this and for it to go from like, with the small theater count it was to like every theater wanting to show it during Halloween, it's like, it's super cool. So I guess I put it as one of my favorites, but it's almost like I am so happy that like teens had this experience because I just never thought they would. And like I said, the fact that it's unrated, the fact that people were legit passing out and throwing up. You might have seen that and been like, oh, like, is that a marketing gimmick? And I 100% don't believe it is, because if I could imagine, like if I took my mom to go see this, she would throw up. She would be gagging seeing this, like for real. And so I think people went into this not knowing what to expect, expecting things to cut back. And there are 2 scenes in there that are going to make people gag. And I think that legit happened.
So this is a movie, Terrifier 2. And I would put another movie that came out this year that made a lot of buzz, The Sadness, are movies that like I appreciate for the recognition they got, and that like I know there are people who love these movies. For me, like these are probably ones that wouldn't make my favorites list. I haven't seen them, but they're like endurance test movies for me, where it's like it's a director who's like, I dare you to look away, and those overstay their welcome for me on a personal taste level, where it's just like I don't get the enjoyment out of it that I know other people truly do from those movies, and I say that in a way that's like, this is just a personal preference thing. I don't think they're badly made movies. They're just not for me. So these are 2 movies that for me fall into that category of like, I'm really glad they're made, and I'm glad the cultural impact they made this year. I will probably never see them.
Yeah, it's interesting because I traditionally would not like both movies. I liked what The Sadness. The Sadness is really like a really, really, really tough watch. And so I wouldn't recommend that to many people, but also it isn't necessarily my jam. But Terrifier kind of won me over because it's supernatural. I think there's maybe some arguments as to whether or not Art the Clown's supernatural, but if you watch the movie, I think it's impossible that he's not, even if he wasn't even if it was a human in the earlier installments. So I think there's like a supernatural element, and they expand the mythology in this that gives me just enough that I'm like, they're doing some cool supernatural things here, and there's more at play. So I think as I've always said, like I gravitate to the more supernatural. I like my ghosts and my vampires and unkillable things, and I like aliens. But I kind of just had to say it because Brian, you got Hellraiser, and so I had to get my required alien in. But yeah, so this movie, and you know what I'll say, this movie is kind of like why can't I remember it? I'm blanking now. Rob Zombie movie with the witches, Lords of Salem. Yeah. It's like Lords of Salem. And because when I saw that movie, I didn't love it, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. And this is one of those movies that is like, and also like it comes up on social media a lot, but I'm also just like thinking about like, I can't believe they put this on screen. Like, I can't believe that they released this. I can't believe that the theaters wanted to keep screening this, and in a good way. So like, I think it's cool that everybody had that experience. So that one, it goes on my favorites list, in a bit of a different way. And I don't even, and I guess one of the other ones that I'll call out is, I'm going to call out Resident Evil. And I feel like there's a lot of other things like I listed on my list, like Prey's awesome, Barbarian's awesome. I love Pearl. But like Resident Evil, which is so weird to be like, because it's such a franchise series. Somebody being like, check out Resident Evil. Like, you guys are sleeping on this, but no, like really you're sleeping on this. Like Resident Evil was such a cool TV show, and it came out the week after Stranger Things 4 Volume 2 came out. It was just the wrong time of the year. And of course, Netflix has been having financial problems, so they have to be a little more choosy. And like, but the Resident Evil TV series is like really good stuff. Like if you like the video games, I don't see how you can't like this. The only reason would be that like Resident Evil to you is more of like the zombie centric stuff that you get in 1 and 2, and that you're looking for more of that. And I get that, but they just tried that with the new Resident Evil movie. It didn't really work. What this movie tries to do, or what this movie show tries to do, is they take the mythology and they say like, how can we make all of this work? And so there's huge monsters, there's zombies, there's zombie humans, there's zombie dogs, there's globe hopping, there's you learn more about Umbrella. And so to me, this has everything that a Resident Evil fan could want. I know obviously there are people out there that disagree. You're right to do it, but I think that so many people either prejudged it or didn't have a chance to check it out. And so I would recommend, even just with the one season, it's cool stuff. So I would recommend that one. I feel like that's one people missed.
Yeah, this is like going back to your point about being the tipping point of there being way too much stuff out there to try and watch. Like, I love Resident Evil. I love the Alice movies. Resident Evil Biohazard is one of my favorite video games I've ever played. In high school, like during garage band practice, we would find ourselves distracted by playing Resident Evil 4, probably way more than we should have, and we should have been playing more music. So I love Resident Evil, for most of my life, and I just have not gotten around to watching this. And I think one thing is like summer gets so busy, everything kind of stacks up. Especially like in Minnesota when you're just trying to take advantage of like the 3 months where you're not covered in snow. And then, like you said, there was like Stranger Things. There's just so much stuff coming out. And I actually haven't gotten around to watching Welcome to Raccoon City, because I'm looking at like the last 2 years, we've had 2 different Resident Evil like adaptations come out. And so I still have yet to kind of jump into the post Alice, like Mila Jovovich Resident Evil adaptations, even though I'm like excited to see kind of where they go, kind of with a new creative freedom to tell these stories in a different way than we've seen in the last 15 or so plus years. So I'm really excited, and it's a bummer that it got canceled because it sounds like they had ideas for a lot of future stuff. But as you mentioned in your favorites list, like you'd still recommend it to people that like the franchise. And so it's something I definitely want to get around to watching at some point. And I'm someone who loves, like, I love the movies. I love the video games. I know the Alice movies in some cases are very different than the video games. So it's going to be interesting just to see like a different creative angle on the adaptation. So just another thing that just kind of carries over, and hopefully I will watch sooner rather than later. But just kind of playing catch up on some of these things as we head into the new year.
And Jonathan, as someone who hesitates to like emotionally invest himself in shows that like are cut off before their time because they don't want to have it like end on this unsatisfying thing, would you say like, do they give enough resolution for the end of the season that it's like it's a satisfying ending to the season? Or is it one of those like, if you watch it, get ready for something that's going to end on a cliffhanger that you won't really find out the resolution to? Like, I'm sure there's some dangling threads because I'm sure they hoped there was going to be multiple seasons, but
I think they definitely leave it open for the second season. There definitely are some things that don't get wrapped up, but I feel like they wrap up enough where it's worth the journey just to see how they're playing with different timelines. They're globe hopping. It's just really interesting. It's an ambitious show. I'll say that. It's a very ambitious show. I think they take a lot of swings. I think they mostly hit them. And I mean, I'm still hoping that another platform will pick it up, but I just don't think so. I feel like there just wasn't the fan support. And I think that's as bad as like the lack of viewership is just the lack of support. I think it was very polarizing. And I don't really know why. I guess I'll say it. And for people that didn't like it, I'm not saying there definitely are like valid criticisms. I guess what I will say is that
on Twitter at Daily Dead News. If
I think, and I guess I'll be very, very blunt about it, is that even before it was coming out, there were people like Wesker can't be black. And it's just, and that kind of mentality wasn't what everybody had. So I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying that there was a strong like group of people that's what they were pushing. And that's what kind of really pushed through there. And it's unfortunate that was the discussion that carried through, instead of people saying, hey, like, this is a really great show, or even people just saying, hey, I like discussing what they didn't like about it. I didn't see as much discussion about the show. I just saw a lot of the discourse before it even came out. So anyway, that was me kind of going to bat for the big franchise, but not a lot of people saw it. So, and I will say the little movie from a little studio called Disney, Barbarian. Barbarian was my favorite movie of the year. Easy. So easy. It was Barbarian. It doesn't even come close, because Barbarian's a movie that should have never been released by Disney. Barbarian shouldn't have been put in theaters. The movie is so unconventional in terms of its structure. It gets really goes really icky places, but then has humor that works. It has social commentary. It does all the right things for me. And so this was for me the biggest surprise of the year, the biggest swing made by a creative team, by a studio. This one paid off. This is just, like I said, this was a big surprise for me.
Still think it's wild that it's directed by one of the cast members from The Whitest Kid You Know, the sketch comedy team.
No,
Zach Krieger was like, I think that's what, mid 2000s. They were kind of like this Kids in the Hall-esque sketch comedy troupe. So to see like this is kind of where this guy has landed is pretty fascinating to me.
Yeah. You go ahead, Derek.
Oh yeah, and I think that's, that comedic background is really helpful to the subversiveness of the story, and just really messing with you. And I mean, it's hard to call it like a horror comedy, because like you said, Jonathan, it's dealing with some really, disturbing things, some timely societal things that you don't want to make jokes about and things like that. But he's somehow able to like weave in this it's tone
so weird.
That's very, you're like, should I be enjoying this? But at the same time, like the story execution, it's so confident in what it's doing, and it comes together by the end. It feels like an anthology that you just watched that somehow comes together better than most anthologies, where it's like, it's not even like a through line story. It's like you've been watching the same story the whole time. You just didn't know it. And I just really appreciate how much of a gamble the movie takes and how, Disney and got behind it enough to put it in theaters.
Yeah, I mean, tonally, like you should. Again, I'm trying to imagine some of the creative choices, and like you said, it's not a comedy. It has a few elements, a few areas where you're laughing, but they're where you shouldn't be, which again goes to his background. It's like, should I be laughing at Justin Long's character? I should be laughing at this douchebag, but they set that up for that. And it's, and yeah, it's just, all of it's really such a gamble. It's just amazing that the movie got made, the movie got released, the movie works as well as it does. And it's funny because that's a lot of the stuff that's what I've talked about a lot. And we get a lot of that. And I think the same thing, interestingly, could probably be said for about 10 movies or shows that came out this year. There's that many good releases. But yeah, that was my favorite. We've been talking a lot about 2022, and we promised our listeners that we're going to get to 2023 sometime this year, that we're going to talk about it. So before we kick 2022 to the curb, before we say goodbye to it, Bryan, Derek, anything else you want to bring up?
Ooh, that is a good question. I think I just want to give a special shout out to The Loneliest Boy in the World, which I saw had its world premiere at Popcorn Frights. It came out on like VOD in October. It's definitely more of an indie movie, but it's actually got like a story credit from Emilio Estevez, and it's directed by Martin Owen. And just really want to give that a shout out because I love it. It's like a really fun horror movie. It's like the most fun horror movie, very heartfelt horror movie I think I saw all year. Basically, the premise is this boy who's like a teenager, his mom dies, and he basically, in the world of this movie, which is a very like 80s-esque kind of tone, small town feel to it, he's like got to prove that he can like make friends or he'll be put in the custody of the state and kind of lose his mother's house and everything like that. So he ends up unable to make friends or really like take notice of the people around him. He ends up like digging up bodies at the cemetery and like bring them back to the house, and like they kind of come to life as these zombies and give him life advice, and each one has like their own they come from all different walks of life and they have their own skills and their own advice, and he kind of forms this like found family out of dead people, which is very disturbing on paper, but somehow they make it very, very fun and heartfelt on screen. And I guess the best way I could put it is it feels like a lost Tim Burton film from like the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. So definitely seek that one out and make time for it. It's a Halloween movie as well, so it's really fun and kind of fun for the whole family if you can get around like the dead body part. Maybe not super young viewers, but a good like teenager and above type of movie that I think brings a lot of heart with its horror. So I just want to give that one a shout out.
Yeah, this one I'll have to check out. Is it out yet? Where is it available, or is it not? And I know I'm asking you a question. Oh, do you know the answer?
No, I do actually. So it's coming out from, it had like a theatrical release in October. It's coming out on Blu-ray and DVD, or it came out, I should say, on Blu-ray and DVD on December 20th from Well Go USA Entertainment. So I believe you can find it on home video and like home media. So I think you should be able to stream it, watch it on Blu-ray. So if you seek it out, Google it, you should be able to find it.
Sounds good. And Bryan, any parting words for last year?
I do want to give just a little quick shout out and a little bit of love to a movie I saw called When I Consume You. It's from Perry Blackshear, who's got a few interesting indie films under his belt. They Look Like People, The Siren. But this is, I'll be fast because it's a movie I can't really talk about much without giving away some of the more special elements of it. It's this brother and sister who are being stalked by this mysterious person, and things pivot into this really weird revenge tale that has some supernatural elements to it. talks a lot about like the bonds made through like family trauma. And it's this very like sad but also kind of bittersweet. Like there's some very like sweet hopeful moments in it, but they're just kind of these little gems within this very dark and bleak movie. And it's kind of one of those movies that I think in a lot of ways are going to come and go, and not a lot of people are going to see it. I did just check. It is available currently for rent on or purchase on Amazon Prime. So I think it's in a few different places, I'm sure, if it's there. But I would recommend checking this one out. I don't think it's going to be for everyone. It's definitely an indie movie. Like it's not, it doesn't have a lot of money behind it. And I'm sure there's some rough edges to it, but I think that there's this beating heart at the middle of it that just made it something really interesting and really special for me. So I would recommend checking it out if you get the chance.
And I already said a lot about 2022, so I'm ready to toss it aside, and no, we're in the future. We're in 2023. It feels so futuristic now. When we thought about what 2023 would be like 20 years ago, I don't think this was it. but here we are.
Those hovercraft cars.
Yeah, we're doing well though. I mean, I guess I kind of I'll joke back and forth, and you can kind of see me going between, things are good and things are terrible. But I have my health, and my immediate family is doing as well as they can. Like I said, we've had some health challenges. We've had some family members pass away. But for 2023 at the moment, everything is going well. And I know that, what do you call it? And so I'll take the wins as I can get them. We have almost a full year ahead of us. I know ahead of time that I am not going to catch up on nearly the number of movies and TV shows I want to, and that's okay, because we're going to be okay with it. As I mentioned before, there are plenty of suggestions that we had. One of the things that I do in 2023, or that I do throughout the year, and that I will do through 2023, is catch up on some titles I missed. There's some things from 2022 I missed. I didn't see Blood Relatives. I wanted to see that one, and I haven't had a chance.
That's a really good one.
And I didn't see A Wounded Fawn. Wanted to see it. Was not able to make it because it was one of the releases later in the year. Obviously, I was digging myself out of snow, as I mentioned, for 20 hours. I could have watched 10 movies, but I didn't have the time. So it happens. And so what I want to say is it's okay. And also, I want to spend time going through my back catalog. Everybody has gaps. Oh my God, I'm doing it. In 2022, one movie I saw that was a gap for me was I didn't make it 2 minutes. I saw Magic, and the 70s film with Anthony Hopkins, and it is to me it's a cult film because not enough people talk about it. I know some of you are like, how have you not seen this? But really, it's not that well known of a film. But it's always been on my list. I finally saw it. It's as good as everybody says. It's an awesome film. And so I have little gaps like that. Everybody's got gaps, and I want to continue to fill those. So I'm not.
I have an interview column literally devoted to the many gaps I have in my horror filmography. So looking forward to filling some of those in again this year.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm sure that, my time is going to be split. I'd say it's probably going to be like 25% catching up on movies from past years. It'll probably be like 50% or like 40%, new movies and TV shows. And then the rest of the time will be like games, comic books. And the Monster Club. I still watch it pretty regularly. It's always it's easily accessible. And like, if it's not that, it's usually something with Vincent Price. I'm like, Vincent Price is always like, he's my comfort food actor. And it's like, what can I put on? It'd be like Twice Told Tales or even some of the Amicus anthologies, I'll put on. So those always go on. But anyway, we have a lot coming out in 23. I'm curious about what some of your favorites are. Brian, you went first when we were talking about 2022. So Derek, we'll put you on the spot and say, what's something in 2023 you're looking forward to? And then again, I will say it doesn't have to be a movie. It can be a movie, but it doesn't have to be a movie.
All right. I'm gonna mix it up from the movie picks and go with the TV series. The Last of Us the adaptation of the video game series of the same name, which is actually premiering very soon after the release of this episode. I believe it premieres on HBO and HBO Max on January 15th. It's funny because you talked about catching up on things that you've been meaning to do for a long time. And I actually just started playing the video game The Last of Us with my dad, and we started playing this just a few weeks ago. I finally got a PlayStation 5 in October, and one of the 3 games I got when I bought it was the remastered version of The Last of Us. And I'd heard it's already been out for 9 years, and I'd heard and then the part 2 came out a couple of years ago, so I'd really wanted to play it at some point, just never got around to it. And it was like, well, we don't really have that many PlayStation 5 games. Let's, throw this in and see what it's like. And we've just been just burning through the game. Like, it's so much fun. It's so addicting. It's like watching a movie, but it's not like overly, some games are like almost overly cinematic where you almost stop playing the game just because there's so many videos. Like, this is just the perfect mix of like cinematic stuff, but then a lot of stuff is also up to you. And it's just such a great survival horror story. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that come to life in an adaptation. And, I feel like I cheated the system because a lot of people have been waiting 10 years to see like a movie or TV adaptation of this video game. And I just started playing it a few weeks ago, and there's already a TV show coming out based on the video game. So I'm excited for that. And and the cast looks amazing too. So it should be really interesting to dive into this one.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it as well. But I also haven't played the video games. I've played a little bit of the first one, and then I have the remastered edition, but I just haven't gotten to it. It was one of those things where I bought it, and then we had the pandemic, and I'm like, do I really want to play this during a pandemic? I tried playing, what was it? Another zombie game. I'm just like, no, I'm not feeling it. And so it's one of those games I haven't gotten to. But I need to. I'll probably see the show first. I think, honestly, I'll end up seeing the show first because it's only a couple weeks away. Brian, what are you looking forward to in the new year?
I am looking forward to the 2 movies that are taking a slightly different angle on the Dracula mythos. The first of which is Chris McKay's Renfield, where Nicholas Hoult will be playing the titular familiar from the Dracula story, and of course anybody who has heard about this knows that Nicolas Cage will be playing Dracula. This looks like it's going to be pretty silly in a really good way. I kind of like that they just even in the title, the fact that they use the same font as the 1930s original Dracula to kind of bring that back for Renfield, I think is fun. The production stills that I've seen, the way they're approaching like what Nicolas Cage is looking like, I'm just really looking forward to seeing what this dynamic between Renfield and Dracula is going to be. I think it's going to be really fun, and I'm looking forward to it a lot. The other take is something I haven't heard a lot about, but just knowing the title of it, I'm intrigued. The Voyage of the Demeter, or Last Voyage of the Demeter, which is actually coming out this January, end of this month, January 27th. And the Demeter has always been a very I love that's how they bring Dracula into England in the book, and I love the way they approach it in the Francis Ford Coppola movie. I like this idea of like this death ship basically rolling into England because everybody on it has been killed by Dracula, and I think the flashes we get of that story, there's further you could dig into that. And so Andre Overdahl is going to be taking the reins on a movie starring Aisling Franciosi, David Dastmalchian, and Liam Cunningham. And honestly, I've seen nothing about this besides like a blurb and a title, but just based off of the premise, I'm really interested to see what's going to come of this.
This is a movie that they've talked about making. I think it was in different hands over the years. So it's one that Derek, I think we've been covering maybe since he started on Daily Dead, because it's one of those projects that's kind of been in and out. And I'm super excited for it. I love everything vampires and Draculas, you know. What I'm curious about is what I was originally curious about when we first heard about the movie was how to maintain the viewer's interest for an hour and a half or 2 hours, knowing that you're on this boat. And I think that, you know, what we usually see is that it's not a passenger vessel, that it's more of a cargo ship, and that Dracula and his cargo are on it. But the BBC Dracula show from a few years back, if you haven't seen it, it's fantastic. And they dedicate the entire second episode, which is like an hour or 90 minutes, to just being on the Demeter. And what they did was, it was a hybrid ship where it had cargo, it had, you know, a rough and tumble crew, but then it also had passengers, had, you know, mixed passengers from like people who kind of snuck on board, just people who are, you know, very well to do. And Dracula was free to mix in with them as Dracula. And so he's more of your like Christopher Lee Dracula. And so it's a bit more of a mystery where he's kind of like weaving in and out, and there's like, oh, something is killing us on this ship. And they don't think it's him because, you know, he's one of the passengers. And that wasn't, you certainly don't see that if you look at a lot of the other adaptations. And so I'm curious where this one's going, and if they, and how they decide to go about it. But yeah, I'm as excited as you. And I also wanted to call it that other one. And so, yes, I'm really curious. Is it a passenger ship, or is it a cargo ship, or is it a hybrid? And how are you going to tackle it?
Yeah, it looks like it'll be a merchant ship based on what little details there are out there. And and also looks like we might have to wait a little bit longer to see it, because I guess it recently switched dates to August 11th of this year, but it will finally be coming out, thankfully, because like you said, I feel like this is one where, you know, it's just been in development for so long that you just wondered if it was ever actually going to happen. But I love what Andre has done in the past. I really enjoyed his previous work, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. I thought his adaptation of that was phenomenal and really got under my skin. And even though, you know, it might not have been the perfect movie, I think it definitely like hit the tone of those books. So I think I'm really interested to see his take on adapting, you know, amazingly, just like one excerpt from Bram Stoker's Dracula. So it just shows like the staying power of that story, and also how you can have a whole movie based on like a segment of that book. So really, really excited to see this as well. And I'm glad you mentioned, it's amazing that in 2023, we're getting 2 theatrical releases on Dracula that are just like very different than anything we've seen before. So very excited for that.
Yeah, I'm super excited for Renfield. You go ahead, Brian.
I was just going to say, as a final note on the Demeter movie, you know, for those who might be a little wary of like, how are they going to fill a feature length movie with that, on top of, Jonathan, what you already mentioned about what they did with the Dracula BBC series. Overall is also like one of his big movies. I think probably his breakout movie was The Autopsy of Jane Doe, and that is a movie literally about 2 guys in a morgue with a dead body that he turned into one of the creepiest, most tension-filled movies I've ever seen. So I think if anyone can kind of pull all of the scares and narrative out of that story, I think Overdoll's the one to do it.
Oh man, now that you mention that, that is so perfect, because it does seem like it would be a similar type of situation. And now I kind of want to watch that movie again, even though it is so unnerving. But yeah, that movie really holds up. And yeah, I could totally see like a similar tone with this. If it's a contained environment, he's shown that he can do it before. So yeah. It'll be a fun year when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'm excited to see Dave Dastmalchian in it. big fan of his. So especially his Count Crowley comics. So excited to see him hop all over the horror sphere. What are we going to call it? All over the horror universe. I like seeing what he does. That's what I'm saying.
Agreed.
It's late here. And I'm excited for Renfield. Nicolas Cage joining the Universal Monsters is just, it's awesome. So
that's what was it? Was it the Dark Universe that they had been building a few years ago? Like, that's the one that we wanted, right?
Was it the one we wanted? Is that what did we?
I know, but I just want people to like go to that image of like, where they had Tom Cruise and all the different actors and like Photoshop Nicolas Cage's Renfield in the back. Like he was there all along. We just didn't know it.
Yeah, I'm okay that we have left the Dark Universe behind. I'm okay with it. I'm very okay with it. For me, there's so many good things coming out. I don't know. I'm excited for Megan. Heather loved it. Everybody loves it. It's coming out really soon. I want to see what all the buzz is about. I think it's one of those viral things where you see just the Megan doll just dancing and you're like, they just went for it. And I think it's cool. And the James Wan, as a producer and as a director has just been like, I'm going to do what I want. We saw that with Malignant. And so I think definitely Megan's something I'm excited for. I'm really excited for Evil Dead Rise. There hasn't been a bad Evil Dead movie. The Evil Dead TV show is awesome. Mm-hmm. Evil Dead consistently delivers, whether they switch directors, whether they switch main characters. Like Evil Dead through and through it always delivers. And I'm excited about this one. And I know that I'm going to say I know with relative certainty that this one does as well, because this was supposed to be an HBO Max streaming movie. And we know that HBO has just been cutting movies left and right. And so this one, I don't think people realize that like this one was allegedly also a chopping block contender. I'm not saying it was like, minutes away because I don't want to start any BS. I'm not saying it was minutes away, but I'm saying they scrapped Batgirl and they scrapped other projects that had more of a budget to them and could potentially make them more money. And they looked at this and they looked at the test screenings and they said, hey, we are confident in how well this movie is going to do. So I feel like if they've shown this to enough horror fans and through enough test audiences and everyone's raving about it and they're like, hey, like we're not only going to like save this movie, but we're going to give it a full theatrical release, like fingers crossed, like that this delivers the goods. So I'm hoping that's a good sign.
Yeah, and trailer dropped as of today, as of when we're recording this, not when you're listening to it.
There's no new trailer.
Yeah. And it looks mighty interesting. I also love the idea of like how they're able to keep over 40 plus years. It's the same basic premise every time. And they keep finding fun and interesting things to do with it and somehow keep it fresh, because it's like we watch the trailer, but it is like we know what the beats are going to be, like the basic beats, but I still don't want to stop watching it. Like they keep making it compelling.
The interesting thing that this franchise does is it doesn't overstay its welcome. They like give you enough time in between movies that then you're hungry for another one. Mm-hmm. And I think they've smartly done that, where it's not like, because you'll like your Saw franchise or Paranormal Activities, whatever the case may be, like a movie a year, a movie every 2 years, like that has a limited shelf life. But this way they're like, we'll make an Evil Dead movie or a show when we have the right idea, when we have the right team, when we have the right backing. And yeah, this looks like it.
Yeah, what do we got? 5 movies and 3 seasons of a TV show, including this last, including this one that's coming up. Yeah.
It's really fun to see that. I was always hoping that we'd see a follow up to the 2013 reboot, and I mean that one. It was always seeing that movie come out and the buzz around it, and then also the trepidation of like, how can they live up to, the legacy of, the Bruce Campbell Evil Dead movies, Sam Raimi Evil Dead movies. and just seeing how they were still able to be so creative and just bonkers and like fearless in that movie. I mean, it makes me, and now here we are nearly 10 years later, finally getting another movie. I'm hoping that they kind of are able to have that creative freedom that the 2013 movie had. And this one, they even have more of I would assume more creative freedom just with the setting of it, taking it out of the cabin, doing its own thing, really expanding the world and the mythology. And there's just so many different directions it could go. It's such an exciting time as a fan of that franchise to see where they'll go next and like what kind of a groundwork they'll lay. So I really hope that, people are, that it lives up to those expectations and people are receptive to it, because I think it's been a long time coming and it's exciting to see where it's going to go next.
Well, it's kind of interesting too, because I always have to think about this. This isn't even an allegedly. Fede Alvarez has just straight said this. You can look at his Twitter account. He wanted to make an Evil Dead movie for his follow-up that took place outside of the cabin. And my understanding was that Sony kind of wanted them to stay at the cabin and he wasn't interested in that. And that is why we didn't see it, allegedly. So it's kind of interesting that once, whatever deal they had in place was no longer in place and they were free to shop it around, that they did, even they didn't do it with Fede Alvarez, that they did leave the cabin. I am curious, though, since they are leaving the cabin and since Mia, in the alternate take of the Evil Dead, she gets infected. And so I do wonder, and she was infected at one point. I wonder if this is going to be a stealth continuation of that movie, because she could potentially take the like Evil Dead kind of like infection outside of that cabin. She could have the Necronomicon. Somehow this stuff has to get out. I mean, it could just be as easy as like, oh, look at someone FedExed me the Necronomicon.
I would love that. You just see a whole sequence where there's just like the bubble, the bubble wrapped envelope, the FedEx envelope, and someone opens it, and it's the freaking Necronomicon.
I swear to God if that's it. But you could.
So great product placement too for FedEx to get that opportunity.
Yeah, but so you could follow Mia. I think it would be cool if they did. But we'll see. I literally
somehow secretly have her interwoven into the story, or like a third act reveal kind of thing.
Yeah, and I literally know nothing. Yeah, I know. I'm looking at you guys, kind of like I'm grinning because I would love to see it, but I literally know nothing.
I mean, it makes sense though, right? Like,
yeah,
and it, in a building like that, you could like reveal there's so many different neighbors, right? So you don't know who's living there until like maybe someone comes, maybe like Bruce Campbell's down the hall too, and he's like, would you keep it down there?
Yeah.
Don't make me get my boomstick. Gosh.
So I think it would be interesting to tie that in, but that's the big one I'm looking forward to. April 21st, I think. Derek, you can fact check me.
Yep. Yes.
Okay, so there's tons of things. I'll just quickly rattle off. So I mean, there's like I'm looking forward to a lot of the Marvel movies. It's like I want to see the Ant-Man movie because we get introduction to Kang. We get MODOK. We're getting MODOK. So in case you didn't know, we're getting MCU MODOK. Doesn't look exactly like the comic book MODOK, but we're getting him. And what else we're getting a new Indiana Jones movie.
Scream 6.
I'm gonna fully admit that I am a like, I don't even know what you call it. I'm an average work. Like, I like the Scream movies. I love the first Scream. Like that was like that came out at like the perfect time for me. Like that was like everybody saw it. Like we had Scream parties. Like I remember showing that movie on VHS for the first time with my friends. Like I love that movie.
But so you were Randy standing next to the TV, like yelling at the people in your living room.
Exactly. And so I mean, and I've shown it to so many people over the years, but I haven't watched the other ones as much. And I was one of the first people, and I will say that I love Scream 4. I said it was one of the best sequels. I love that movie. So I love the franchise. The new one I was okay with. So am I going to watch this? Yes. Am I super excited about it? I'm going to see it. You know what I mean? And so I'm really curious to see what they do. But I guess what I'm saying by that is it's okay to be like, well, we'll see what happens. Like if it's good, great. if it's great, great. And if it's bad, I'll survive, and I know they'll make more, and I'll be okay. There's certain movies that if you screw them up, I won't survive.
Honestly, sometimes though, those are the best ones to go into because it's like, I don't really care how this goes. Like if it's not going to break my heart if it's not good. And if it's good, then great. It was fun. Like that was kind of how like I got to experience the last couple of Halloween movies because I'm just not that like emotionally invested in them. So like, you know, Halloween Kills was ridiculous and stupid. And I got to love it because I don't care that they like took it in these really weird directions that don't really fit the franchise. So yeah, like being able to go into Scream 6 that way and just like take it for what it is, like that's some of your best, I think, movie viewing experiences come from that, being able to have that approach to it.
Yeah, that's how I was with Halloween Ends. I was like, I know a lot of people were pissed off about that movie, and I'm just like, it's fine. Like I'll go see the next one.
I wasn't pissed off. I was just like, that was something. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, I did forget to tell you because you're here, and our Corpse Club listeners just get to hear a random side conversation. But I told Derek about this, but I guess I heard from an interview with David Gordon Green that the end of the movie originally was supposed to be them finding like the Michael Myers mask, like in the Silver Shamrock production. So like saying that like, you know, like all the radio towers that we saw, they like point out like intentionally in like Ends and in Kills, like that was supposed to be like the signal, I guess. So I guess it was supposed to be that the mask is making them do it. But yeah, I would have been really surprised if after 2 movies, like they ended the third one on, no, it's really Silver Shamrock.
The whole time they've been behind it.
Show the runes, the rune stones.
But I guess it wasn't filmed, but I guess it really was part of the plan.
Well,
so
and that font, that Halloween 3 font was used, you know, and of course at that point, after seeing what they had done in the trilogy, I honestly, I don't know if I would have been surprised because it just like anything went at that point, which is kind of the reason I really like, I found a lot to enjoy with Ends too. I didn't mention it on this episode just because, you know, it's a difficult movie to like really process my feelings about, but I really like, I don't know, I liked how they took those swings. Like it took me a while to realize like, oh, they're doing anything in this trilogy. And once I kind of like was able to buy into that, then I had a lot of fun with what they did. So, but I can understand how divisive it is as well. It's interesting.
Yeah, I haven't. We're getting an extended episode here because I haven't had a chance to catch up with you guys. I missed out on talking Hellraiser. We're not going to talk about that this episode, but I missed out on talking Hellraiser, and I missed out on talking Halloween Ends.
I'm also like, I'm laughing because I feel like, okay, we've hit the trifecta because we always have to bring up Hellraiser. I always have to bring up Hellraiser. Jonathan will always bring up Alien, and somehow the discussion will always wind up back on the latest Halloween trilogy. Like I'm pretty sure if you did like some kind of like quantitative analysis of Corpse Club 2022, I would put money on the fact that we spent more time talking about Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends than any other movie.
Well, I just don't understand as I continue to take us off track. Michael Myers was clearly like supernatural by the end of Kills. Like he had been stabbed and shot and beat enough times, and then he teleports to kill the daughter. I don't remember anybody's names. I'm sorry. And so he's clearly supernatural by the end of it. And then by the time we get to Ends, he's not. There's scenes where it looks. What's the kid's name that's running around? Spoilers for anybody.
Corey Cunningham.
Like it looks like Corey gets hypnotized in the beginning of that movie. Like he grabs him, he looks in his eyes. Yeah, he's looking at him.
Absolutely.
And that doesn't necessarily go anywhere. So I was really, honestly, I was on board with Corey being the killer and them going in weird places. And then I feel like at the end, I'm getting all this out. We're still not out of 2022, everybody. But I feel like then they decided to play it safe at the end because they're like, we have to wrap up this. It's not just wrapping up the trilogy. It's wrapping up Jamie Lee Curtis and her arc. And I get that. But like this movie, like really wanted to go somewhere else in that third act that it didn't.
It was an afterthought. Yeah. The whole final battle between Jamie Lee Curtis and Michael. Like I really liked the way it actually played out and the way it was executed, but because they had spent so much time with Corey leading up to that it fell flat.
I really wish that they had continued with Corey. I'll say that, and maybe that's controversial, but I wish they would have continued with Corey and they had just made these unique movies. Like, I think then that's a problem they ran into. I think they had such a cool story that then they like were like, we don't know. Well, we don't want to abandon this, because sometimes, you know, like you're creating something, you have an idea, and you're like, this is gold, and like this is where it's telling me to go. But then I think by the end they didn't know how to weave it back in. Like there was, there were just some strange things too, where like, more spoilers, like him killing himself didn't feel real to that character, and it felt like she should have killed him and then realized, you know, something like that. Like he was Michael, or he wasn't Michael Myers. Like, again, it just felt like like they were playing with different things. I would have loved to have seen what like the original screenplay was, or maybe the original cuts. I just feel like that ending we got maybe wasn't exactly what they planned, but I did like the first two acts of it.
Which is also interesting, because they could have taken like a Jamie Lloyd, you know, from from one of the other Halloween timelines, or like a Tommy Jarvis thing, which they chickened out on for both of those. But like they could have played more with maybe Corey waffling back and forth and not, you know, really leaning into being the killer, lean more into this kind of final battle between Laurie and Michael, and then kind of have that last stinger be like, well, this can continue with Corey kind of taking on the mantle. You know, that could have been a way that they could have kind of kept that door open. And I'm sure at that point I probably would have also complained that like, well, that's been done. But I just like, I just think, given the context of what they were trying to do, they're trying to conclude this trilogy and to introduce this new element, and then ultimately just kind of like have it fizzle out and then go back to Laurie and Michael. It just didn't land the way I think they would have liked it to.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because funny enough, it kind of plays like the new Star Wars trilogy, but the new Star Wars trilogy had 3 separate creative teams. I know J.J. Abrams came back, but essentially he had a different writer, and he was kind of playing, he was picking up from where Rian Johnson left it off. And because they had, and Colin Trevorrow was supposed to do it. So this movie feels like, these 3 movies feel like they're from different filmmakers. And I'm not saying that even necessarily as a criticism, because that could have fully been the intention, but it's just kind of interesting, because I do think there's not it's not easy to chart Laurie's arc across all 3. And I know you have Jamie Lee Curtis, so then you're like, well, we have to use her. But in some cases, it kind of makes sense that like 2018 was the Jamie Lee Curtis movie, and then like you don't have like, what do you call it? It follows her daughter in the second one, and it follows her granddaughter in the third. I know that's kind of what they're doing, but I think maybe it didn't lean into that as much.
And I know, like, for each of the writing teams on the credited teams, it's like Danny McBride and David Gordon Green, they're kind of working with a different writer or set of writers, like taking the forefront. So it's almost like they had a writer's room kind of mentality. And it's like each writer's team kind of brought like a very different vision to the table as far as like how they were going to kind of try and subvert expectations with Michael, or just kind of do something unique in that world, which it actually could be really interesting for like an anthology TV series or something, where you get to like just tell different stories. But then as a whole, it kind of is like Halloween Ends, to me, almost felt like that would have been really good as like the first movie in the trilogy, because then you can revisit the Corey stuff, and maybe by the end he's the one that's, you know, shackled in the prison yard at 40 years later, someone's bringing the mask to him, you know, like there's a really interesting, like you said, it's such a juicy story that it's almost like you're just like, but why didn't we get to this sooner? You know, because you still could have built up the Laurie stuff at the same time, but then seeing like Corey change over a 3-movie arc, and like you mentioned, Brian, maybe they do the Friday 5 kind of, you know, tease at the end or something like that. Or maybe they go zombie Michael like they did with zombie Jason instead. Who knows?
I would have been
fascinating.
I would have been completely cool if their explanation at the end of Ends was that the mask amplifies what you already are. So if you're someone that wants to do harm to people, this will amplify you. And I think that's kind of where they were going with it, which I think is a really interesting thing to explore. And it also lets you take the franchise in different ways in the future, because it's like, well, Michael's dead, but the spirit, whatever was infused into him, continues, whether it's through that mask or additional mask. It's like this mask causes you to do this. And then you can do really interesting things in the future, because like here they set up Corey, which is like the person who like accidentally, kills, he's trying to babysit, and it kind of ruins his life. He's getting picked on, and then the mask and this hypnotism like amplifies him and turns him into this murderer. And like, can he stay normal? Like, can he pull back from this or not? So if you do different scenarios like that, where it's like, you can gender swap, you can do all kinds of different people and say, well, what happens when you put on the mask? I think that's really cool. That's not what we're getting. That's really cool. And
I think, yeah, that's a good pitch though for like a TV series, like, because it's very like there's a way you could continue the story beyond, like if you have to figure out, okay, what do we do after Michael? Like if and like you said, it seems like we've gotten supernatural slices of that, like in Kills. So it's like, but then it's almost like you think you're going one direction, and then they like back the car up, and then they take another road, and then. But then you just run out of time eventually. So
and that's a perfect segue.
It's never boring, though. It's never boring.
It's a perfect segue, because we are running out of time. We have taken this in a completely different direction, and I hope that for our listeners, you've enjoyed getting our take on this, because we're enjoying talking about it, and we haven't had a chance to catch up in a while. But we do want to wrap up in a minute. We have not talked nearly enough about 2023, but that's okay, because we have the whole year to talk about 2023. So I will ask my co-host for any last, like, what are you looking forward to? Quick, like what do you call it? You can name off a few of them quickly, or talk about one. Bryan, what do you got for 23? What else are you looking forward to?
Oh, honestly, I don't necessarily have this is more one I want to manifest. Because I haven't heard any announcements or anything, but I would love to hear that we're going to get more movies in the Predator universe with a similar approach to Prey. Like, you've heard everybody talk, like, I want to see the Viking version of Prey. I want to see like the medieval England version of Prey. Like, I want to see Predator. Like, it's such an easy thing to do. Just take a Predator and pluck them, or like place them in all these different time periods and areas, like feudal Japan, put them in there, have them go against a samurai. Like, I'm a simple man with simple tastes, and just keep putting the Predator versus different kinds of warriors throughout time. I'm going to be a happy dude. So announce that in 2023. That's kind of what I'm trying to push for.
Yeah, as good as Prey was, and as well as it did, like, we should have an announcement. I know we're getting a new Alien movie, because I'm going to keep talking about Alien, but we're this spring, Fede Alvarez is directing his new Alien movie. I couldn't be happier.
And not too long after that, we're getting a show.
Yeah, we are. And I've seen, I think I mentioned last time, I've seen concept art from it. It is not what I was expecting, in a good way. I was thinking, when I heard it was going to take place on Earth, I felt it was going to take place on like now Earth, and it's not. It feels like it's like Weyland-Yutani, like maybe a little more futuristic looking version of the world we saw in Aliens, but still like in that world. It's that kind of Earth from what it looks like from the facility.
Nice. And maybe in 2024 we'll get a new AVP movie. I need to see what happens after Requiem,
Yeah, I have a great idea for an AVP movie, so maybe one day.
Well, that is, definitely. Well, you'd be the person for it, that's for sure. You've done your homework.
I got some ideas. And so 2023, what are you looking forward to, Derek?
So one that's coming out, another one that's coming out quite soon is Knock at the Cabin, which is an adaptation of Paul G. Tremblay's novel, The Cabin at the End of the World. This is directed by M. Night Shyamalan, and I'm really excited for this one. I haven't read the book yet, but I'm hoping to fit it in before the movie comes out in February. I just love it feels, even though I know the book was written several years ago, it just feels like such a perfect fit for Shyamalan. And I actually recently saw Old for the first time, or finished watching it for the first time last week. So I'm really enjoying what he's been doing lately, and I just think this is a great fit for him. I love we're going to see like Dave Bautista in a really interesting role in this one, and just the concept of like strangers showing up to your cabin and like insisting that they have to kill one of you to save the world. It's just such a bizarre kind of log line that I feel like that story can go in 1,000 different directions. So that one I'm really excited for, and it's coming out kind of right around the corner. So that's kind of at the forefront for me. Otherwise, just going to be kind of catching up on some other things. I do want to read Clown in a Cornfield 2, Friendo Lives by Adam Caesar.
I've heard good things about that.
Yes, I really enjoyed the first one. The second one came out in like August of 2022, and there's a film adaptation in the works of the first book. So I'm I really enjoyed the first book and the characters and everything. So definitely want to check that out. It's kind of on my catch up list in 2023. So just obviously a lot to look forward to, and everything that has already been mentioned is on the list to look forward to. So should be another busy year of trying to keep the eyeballs open and see as much as we can.
Yeah. I guess the only other one I'll call out, since I guess I'm staying in Sam Raimi territory for my 23, is 65 with Adam Driver.
Ooh, yeah.
It's Planet of the Apes with dinosaurs. I wasn't expecting to want to see this movie. I didn't know this movie was really in the works. I saw the trailer and I'm just like, okay, I'm on board for this. It's one of those popcorn movies that you would have seen, you could see them in any decade, but I can imagine this coming out from Hammer or, kind of like the prehistoric movies they used to make. And, I'm excited for that one. And there's a bunch of other things coming out that I can't wait for. But yeah, I'll say that. And then, I don't know, personally, in 23, I want to spend some time hanging out with you guys some more, hoping we do Overlook. I'd like to do San Diego Comic-Con, so I'm hoping we get to do that. I want to take a couple trips. I want to see some more movies on the drive-in screen. I'm not going to be going to theaters as much still, but I want to see some movies on the drive-in screen. That would be cool. And then I think another goal I have for myself is to keep pushing forward with some comic book work. I know I talked about Hellraiser, which myself and Oliver released last year around Halloween. And I'm going to keep working on some projects. So hopefully I'll have some fun things to talk about throughout the year. Do you guys have any goals or anything you're excited about that is not a movie release?
Going to be bringing back the Twitch channel. We did some fun work with it in, I think early fall of last year, ramped up to that really great fundraiser, the Hellraiser Raiser that we did. And then I kind of needed to take like a couple months break just because it was a lot went into that. So, I'd been saying that the Twitch stream or the Twitch channel was something I wanted to do on a long-term basis. And so I'm sticking to that this year. And you're going to see some more content coming out on the Twitch channel. So follow us there.
Awesome. Maybe you and I can have a rewatch of some Hellraiser sequels.
No. I was going to like, nope.
Unless it's 1 through 4, I have officially, I'm retired from watching anything past Bloodline. And maybe last year's reboot, but yeah, anything the 5 through 10, not happening ever again. Hellworld. Sorry, no, I spoke too soon. Oh. I will watch that from time to time because it is just silly, stupid fun.
Mm-hmm. A good rainy day movie.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Well, yeah, I had a ton of fun on that with you for one of those. So looking forward to hopefully partaking again in the future. And for me, just. There's always I've always kind of tinkering with creative stuff on the side. So I've got some like creative writing type stuff that I've been working on. And my thing is like I just need to finish something and be like, okay, it's done and just get to that point. So I'm hoping to not be too much of a perfectionist and just finish something and put it out there or at least have it ready to be looked at. So and I will say on that note, obviously I want to give a shout out to Heather for her new book, Monsters Makeup and Effects Volume 2. We actually talked to her about it on an episode of Corpse Club in December. So be sure to check that out. Check out the book. And she's going to have Volume 3 coming out in the future. So super excited for that. And it's been really awesome kind of helping out with that on like the editing side of things too. So keep an eye out for that. And then Scott Drevitt, our another one of our co-hosts, will also be having his new book coming out, A Cut Below. So I'm super excited for that.
Cannot wait.
Yeah, it's going to be so exciting to see, him bring that into the world. So that's definitely on the top of the list as well.
Yeah, I'm excited. We got some good things in 23, and I guess I will say, on that note, that I'm excited for what we have planned for Daily Dead, which is that we're going to be doing some different things. I think it's been especially over the last year, for those of you who listen to Corpse Club and who read Daily Dead, you're like, well, there's been some changes there, and I think that's something you'll continue to see. I think a good way to say it is it's kind of like the Avengers, in that we'll have some of our like individual things going on, but then we'll also come together for big events as well. I think the reason is just that we've had some cool opportunities. I think it's also that, there's our interests lie in some cases beyond just writing, and like with Bryan, Twitch was something that he was really passionate about. For myself, it's also comic books, and everyone's multifaceted. And I think what you're going to start seeing more and more of is our passion, coming through, whether it's Daily Dead affiliated or we're just talking about it because we're excited about it. You're going to see more and more of that from our team. So I think there'll be interesting and kind of new ways we'll get that out on the site. So I think, the thing is that you'll be coming to Daily Dead, not just for daily news, which is kind of what we're known for, but it might be, news in a given day, but it also may be us doing something live from an event. It may be us, talking about a book release from Scott or Heather. It may be a comic book from me, or a Twitch event from Bryan, or something cool from Derek, but and from the rest of our talented team members. But I think we're going to continue to do more and more of that, because there's just so many creative people amongst the team, and they have so much that they're working on. So I think that's one thing I'm super excited and proud of is the team, what everybody's doing, and what they have coming out in the year. Absolutely. And with that being said, we're done with this episode. This is a double-sized episode, but I think it's a great way to start the new year, is to, like I said, give you a little bit of our thoughts on 2022, or a lot of our thoughts on 2022, and then hear what we're excited for the new year. I wish everybody, all of our listeners, the very best, and we're excited to continue to bring you Daily Dead coverage and Corpse Club episodes. We also want to thank Bryan. Every time, Bryan, thank you for helping us out each and every episode. We wouldn't be able to do this without you. And of course, our listeners, we couldn't do this without you either, especially of those of you who have signed up for a Corpse Club membership. It keeps us going and allows us to continue to make these episodes. If you want to learn more about Corpse Club, visit corpseclub.com to check out all of our backlog of episodes. Like I said, we're almost at episode 300. We'll be hitting it sometime this year. And you can check out our entire back catalog. You can sign up to be a member. We have a t-shirt, we have a membership card, we have a pin, and you can pick an episode topic if you want as well. So go to corpseclub.com to check it out. Also, don't forget to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. It really helps. So if you haven't gone and given us a review, please do. You can also find us on YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, Amazon, and all of your favorite podcast providers. If you want to get in touch, you can reach out anytime. We're at contact@corpseclub.com. On Twitter, we're at Daily Dead News, at Corpse Club. On Instagram and Facebook, we are under Corpse Club as well. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, stay scary.